productivity, winning strategies, and aligning employer-employee goals. If this sounds like something your business could use more of, then you've come to the right place. The Business Mechanic Show with your host, Vaughn Sigmund. Let Vaughn show you how to develop, improve, and jumpstart your business. So now, please welcome the host of The Business Mechanic, Vaughn Sigmund.
Welcome to the Business Mechanic Show. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmund, and today we're going to talk about micromanagement. Do you want to back off being a micromanager? Do you suspect that you're stifling your team, you're overworking yourself? Today's show, we're going to dig into that. We're going to find some causes, and then we're going to talk about some solutions. So let's get after it. First of all, let's talk about micromanagement. Micromanagement, it's a term that I know you've heard if you're anywhere part of business, and it defines a style of management where the manager tries to control every thought, action of the individuals on their team. And while this management style might seem practical on the surface, command and control, it ultimately fails because no one can control multiple people on a scaling basis. Executing a vast number of actions in a dynamic, changing environment, well, changes in a situation are going to occur rapidly and unpredictably. You just can't do it. You can do it to a point, depending on the size of the team and depending on the consistency of that team. But if you try to grow past a certain capacity, it's going to implode. And in this podcast, we're going to explore the effects of micromanagement on your team, on your company, and yourself. Because my biggest point on this is the unscalability of it. You're capping yourself, you're capping your team, you're capping the level of growth because of your capacity. You can only control so much. And stifling growth of the team and your company, that's poison. It's very detrimental because if you attempt to grow past your capacity, failure ensues. I've seen it many times. It goes along generally the lines of the Peter Principle. And if you don't know what the Peter Principle is, please go look it up. The most common symptom where you may be a micromanagement fiend is your team lacks initiative. Oh boy. That drives many unknowing managers crazy. They're a little bit or a lot of a micromanagement fiend. They constantly complain that the team will not take initiative. That's one of the most common symptoms. Their team members will not take action unless directed to do so. So they feel they are the only ones to take action. Nobody else is doing it. I've got to get it going. I won't anybody do anything around here without being told. This can and does significantly impact on the productivity of your team. You're slowing it down. And if your team's slowed down, your company's being slowed down. And as a whole, it becomes a big delay factor in decision-making, and certainly prevents growth. Micromanagement also affects your team's ability to find solutions. You're not teaching them to think. I've been talking recently a lot about critical thinking skills. You're sucking their ability to grow and learn to manage themselves, to empower themselves, to make decisions on themselves, and make them completely reliant on you. What you're teaching them is, if I wait long enough, my boss will just tell me what to do, or my boss will do it for me. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Instead of taking initiative to get started on something or seek a solution, Team members will just sit around and wait to be told what to do. They may be looking busy, but they may not be working on the priorities that you've set forth, that you expect. And of course, this almost always leads to delays, missed opportunities, and is sometimes disastrous to a company. And furthermore, even in an emergency, a team that is being micromanaged, they just won't mobilize. They won't take action. They'll be waited told what to do. Bold and aggressive action becomes very rare, and creativity grinds to a halt. Your team tends to stay inside their own silo, and we hate silos. And they'll avoid stepping out to coordinate efforts with other departments or divisions for fear of overstepping their bounds. They don't want to step on toes. And this leads to an overall sense of passivity. They become very passive, sometimes passive aggressive, and they will fail to react even when something is detrimental to the company. They'll be waiting around to be told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, because they just have not been trained or empowered to make these decisions. And I'm going to later on talk about critical thinking, but I'll have a link to my critical thinking cheat sheet in the show notes for this podcast. Download it. I hopefully will be able to motivate you to want to back off if you've ever been told or you have indications that you're a little overbearing in your management style. This critical thinking part will be a huge help to you. Think about it in military terms. When in battle, the squad or the team must be empowered to know what to do when things go wrong or things change beyond a plan. As the old saying goes, a plan's fine until somebody starts shooting at you. And things change. They always do. So the team members, the soldiers, they can't go running to the corporal or sergeant to ask what to do when things are going differently than planned. There's no time for that. Lives are at stake. So in military training, they form what is called a decentralized approach to their leadership. This is, if you want to learn more about decentralized management styles, leadership styles, go read the book, Extreme Ownership. I love it. It's one of my favorite books. Highly recommended. It's all covered well in there. Go do it. Micromanagers, and maybe that's you, or you feel maybe a little over controlling, they create a very centralized command approach. And as I've said very often, command and control does not work in business due to the aforementioned limits. It can work for a little bit, and sometimes there's situations where you've got to be a little over controlling and micromanage things, yes, but it cannot be a day in and day out leadership method because it eventually falls apart. Your growth, your team's growth, and your company's growth is stalled and frustration abounds. And apart from the aforementioned effects, micromanagement can also lead to, unsurprisingly, a decrease in employee morale. When employees are not allowed to take the initiative, feel empowered, this is a huge issue. If they're constantly being directed, looked at all the time, every little thing's pointed out that is a mistake, it leads to a sense or a feeling of being undervalued. And it creates, and you earn, a culture of resentment towards you. And that in turn leads to higher turnover, lower productivity, lower levels of job satisfaction, engagement. And you want to avoid that. I know you do. But let me tell you why some employees, all employees essentially, despise micromanagement. And I'm going to talk about some of the telltale signs of them feeling over-supervised. Because when they feel micromanaged, it brings up these feelings of, as I've said before, frustration, suffocation in the workplace. They feel smothered. But why do employees universally seem to dread this management style? And how can one identify with a healthy oversight crosses into a territory of micromanagement? Because there's a fine line in there where you do need to be managed. My previous podcast was on being too hands off. This is about being too hands on. We've got to strike an equal, acceptable balance because of the pitfalls of micromanagement. I'm repeating myself, I know, but I can't say it enough. It stifles creativity. It stifles autonomy. It limits an employee's ability to think creatively, critically, solve problems independently. If you got employees coming to you constantly asking you, what should I do? Here's a problem. They keep coming to you with a problem, but no solutions. You feel like nobody around you has a brain. It's a little extreme, but you know how harsh I can be sometimes. You're micromanaging because even minor decisions need your approval. And thus, employees feel very undervalued, untrusted. And that's where this decrease in creativity and critical thinking, innovative thinking, goes away. It also increases stress and burnout because your constant oversight as a micromanager can create an oppressive work environment. Your employees feel constantly judged and scrutinized like they can't do anything right. What a horrible way to go to work. And this increases stress and often leads to burnout where they just can't do it anymore. I can't take this anymore. And they spin out and leave. They find somebody else to work for. Remember, they join companies, they leave bosses. And your best people, your people with the highest aptitude towards critical thinking and the potential thereof, they're the first to go. They can't be managed like this. They're too strong to be controlled. And you don't want to control them. You want to develop them. You want to channel that intelligence, maybe that raw ability. And also, as I often say, trust begets trust. And if you're a micromanager, you're purely sending the message that you don't trust them. And when you don't trust them, they don't trust you. And unless you have a trusting environment within your leadership group, you're stifled. It also hinders their confidence because when managers are hovering over every task, they lack trust. This undermines your employees' confidence and creates, as I've already mentioned, this cycle of dependency and inefficiency. It also hinders professional growth. You can't develop people to grow into other needed positions within the organization because they're so dependent on you. John Maxwell's 5 Levels of Leadership, if you haven't read it, it's one of the most impactful leadership books there is on the planet. Please read that if you're looking to move from manager to leader, want to start going down the right path. It's a lot of mindsets and thoughts that you need to have firmly implanted. And as you move up the levels of John Maxwell's leadership scale, making your team independent of you, that you're dispensable, well, that's the finest form of leadership. They don't need you anymore. And if you were to leave or something happened and you couldn't come to work tomorrow, nothing would change. Nothing would change. But in a micromanagement environment, things stop or they fall apart because your people are too dependent on you. And at the time, it may feel like the right thing to do. If you're a little over controlling or a lot over controlling, it feels like the right thing to do because I've got to get things done right around here. But it's actually the wrong thing to do because you're not only stifling your own personal growth, but you're stifling their growth. You cannot identify the leaders within your organization unless it's a popularity contest. You can't see their capabilities. Employees under a micromanagement system often miss learning from their mistakes. And those are some of our best teaching moments, as long as we learn from them. And for sure, they will not take ownership of their work. That was 2 podcasts ago. And this hampers their professional development and growth within your organization. If your company wants to grow, if you want to grow, micromanagement, being overbearing, being too controlling, kills growth. And it also very often creates a toxic work environment. Do you really want to be called a toxic manager? No, of course you don't. But you may not realize that you are. And toxic's a little extreme, but you're not their favorite. Sorry. When I'm asking the question in interviews, who's your best manager? Who's the worst manager you ever had? Micromanager always comes up under the worst manager they ever had. And you may not even realize because it just seems to you it's the right thing to do. It's what I've got to do to get through the day. But the byproduct of that micromanagement is it breeds resentment. It breeds discontent. And that's why I call it creating a toxic, certainly dysfunctional atmosphere where open communication, any kind of collaboration completely stifled or dependent on you. And this often results in the micromanager having to micromanage even more. And they're constantly hiring new people due to this turnover. It's a byproduct. Turnover is always one of the strong signs, especially if you're losing good people, that you're being a little over controlling, if not a lot. And some signs of your employees feeling micromanagement you need to be aware of. These are some of the bad habits and how employees are going to feel about your micromanagement. This overbearing supervision, feeling like your manager is constantly looking over your shoulder, even for the just most routine things. Classic sign of micromanagement. Excessive reporting requirements. If your controlling nature requires them to spend an extraordinary amount or a lot of time reporting on their work, tracking work, sometimes to the point that they're actually doing more of the tracking than they are the actual work, you're likely being micromanagers. This lack of decision-making freedom, when everybody's dependent on you, when you're constantly being flooded all day, every day with a lot of questions, even small decisions that need your approval, or they got to run that by you. They just bring you problems. You've got to solve it. That's a huge red flag for you being over controlling. And if you are criticizing even minor details, constant criticism or correction of minor details, well, that's a sign. Managerial focus on process over the outcome. I'm working with one very high C on the disc profile, who's a very controlling guy. We're trying to coach him out of this very thing right now. Everything has to be perfect versus good enough. They've got to ship enough to hit their monthly commitments to their clients. The clients are out there on their assembly line waiting on their parts to arrive from this company. And things are constantly being delayed because of this over level of perfectionism, where good enough will really work. A manager who is more concerned with how you do the job rather than the results is also a micromanager. Let's tackle this micromanagement dilemma. Here's my step-by-step instructions to change your management style. First of all, you're going to need to self-reflect. And if you think you got the problem, you need to acknowledge the problem. So start with self-reflection, recognize it, acknowledge it, embrace it, that you might have these tendencies, and understand the root causes of it. You don't really mean to. You don't get up and go to work wanting to be a manager who creates dysfunction with your team. You just want to get things done right. I get it. I know where you're coming from. But you don't trust your people. You have a fear of failure, or you have this high level of desire for perfection. And it's in your DISC profile. If you have a tendency to be one of these micromanagers, you do have your DISC, right? Link in the show notes for it. And if you've got a very strong indication that you have these tendencies, you're embracing that and you want to do something about it, let's confirm it, maybe get some ideas of where it's coming from, what it looks like, what you're doing that is being interpreted as you being a micromanager. So you need to seek some feedback. You need to actively seek this feedback from your team members, your peers, maybe your supervisor, about your management style. And this is the hard part, because it's not personal. It feels personal. It's hard not to take it personal, but they're taking it personally too, around that whole trust issue. So be open to criticism. Be willing to understand the impact. Look at the big picture part of what you need to change, why you need to change it, and how you're impacting your team. You need to understand that. And rest assured, if you're not well connected with your team, and you're probably not if you're overly controlling, and they lack trust, they will not be honest with you. So don't think for a minute, if I sit down with everybody and ask them, do you feel like I'm a micromanager? Do you think I'm overbearing? You probably don't sound like that. But if you ask, they're not going to tell you the truth. You're the boss. You're already over controlling. There's no way on God's green earth you're going to get an honest answer out of you. They just won't. So all the asking in the world won't get you the answers you need, not to your face. They will not tell you their opinion, no matter what. So don't waste your time. Don't think that's the way to go get direction on your developmental improvement. Instead, Here's the best way possible. It's how I learned my levels of ineffectiveness as a leader. It was so powerful for me, but so few companies deploy, especially small and mid-sized companies, deploy this very inexpensive approach of 360 feedback. They don't have a 360 feedback process where you and other managers get regular, anonymous feedback from peers and direct reports. It is such an important tool. And if I piqued your interest on this, if you think this might be something that if you're a business owner, an executive within an organization, or you can want to move this up the food chain to someone who can make a decision on this, let's talk about it. I'll put a link to my Talasure 360 feedback. It's very inexpensive, but it is super powerful. And I credit 360 feedback to a huge jump in my own career and success back in the day. But I never would have known it because I, in my mind, thought I was doing a really great job. I thought I was a master at what I got the 360 feedback on, only to find out I was not, and how I was horribly impacting my team members. But I didn't take it personally. I took it as a challenge. I took it as a way for me to get better at my job. You need to have that same attitude when you get the feedback. It's not going to feel good. And so go ahead and take that few minutes to take it personally and be offended and disagree with it. But if you're getting it the same sort of topic multiple times in your 360 feedback, probably true. So feel bad for a minute, get over it, and start doing something about it. You've got to set clear expectations, and you've got to trust your team. You must, and this is always the case, but micromanagers tend to approach communication in a very efficient manner, not a very effective manner. And you've got to clearly communicate your expectation regarding goals and outcomes. Once expectations are set, you've got to trust your team to deliver. That takes time as you're working your way out of this controlling nature. And then you've got to be aware that I need to avoid the urge to get mired in every detail. Trust begets trust. Now, it's okay to provide feedback, constructive feedback, aimed at helping the team members grow. You need to acknowledge and celebrate the achievements, not just point out everything that's gone wrong. Start with the positive. Set some milestones as part of your expectations. In the first week, we need this. The second week, we need this. This is how we're going to grow it, how we're going to accomplish it. Set these milestones so your team members can track their progress. And again, there's common themes to these podcasts, but this is one that I think is critical, is you got to catch them doing it right. You must reward the behaviors you seek. And when you do, you'll get the behaviors more often. So yes, it's okay to supervise, but you can't overmanage it, and be more positive than negative. That emotional bank account. Make more deposits than withdrawals. Be careful of those withdrawals. Your nature is to go find what's wrong. I get it. That is your human nature. You need to adapt your nature. Change your mindset to catch them doing it right more often than wrong. And if they're doing it wrong all the time, that's on you, friend. You've done something wrong. You need to figure out what you've done wrong in the way of training and setting expectations, and we need to address that. And maybe it even means delegating the training and communication to somebody else. That's a hard one. Delegating is really hard for somebody that has micromanagement tendencies. But you're going to need to dig into delegation and get after it. You're going to need to practice your delegating tasks. Start with small things. Start small, baby steps, and then gradually increase the level of responsibility to a person or a couple people so that they can start gaining your trust, which will allow you to grant more trust. But you've got to understand that delegation includes accepting different approaches to task. They won't always do it exactly the way you would do it. You got to give that up. As long as it gets done and it gets done right and gets done on time, you should be good with that. But if you're out there redirecting because they're not doing it exactly like you do all the time, you're not really delegating. You're not granting that trust. So, friends, be patient. No, in the beginning, they won't get it done quickly, certainly not as quickly as you could do it yourself. It takes practice. It takes repetition. That's how they learn. It's how we all learn. So back the hell up and let them learn. And always, you're likely doing this and don't even realize it. It's not a conscious thought of yours, but you must avoid stepping in when things aren't going as fast or in the way that you want it to, and taking it away and doing it yourself. Because that's just more efficient to get it done that way. But it's not effective. Effective is the long game. Efficient is the short game. We're in the long game when we're in business. So avoid stepping in, taking it away at all costs. If you're constantly taking away and doing it yourself, again, you're blowing up trust. You're making them completely dependent on you. You're creating dysfunction. You're stifling initiative and creativity. And you're just teaching them, hey, if I'm lazy enough, I take enough time, and maybe they're even passively aggressively doing it wrong because they just know you'll come in and take care of it for them. Avoid that at all cost. And you need to focus on the big picture. You, under your DISC profile, are likely, as a micromanager, to be very detail-oriented. And absolutely, that's a powerful superpower that you have. It just is being applied the wrong way. And so you need to learn adaptation, an adaptation to your detail orientation. You need to shift your focus from how tasks are being done to the overall outcome and objectives being accomplished. And you need to encourage and support, let loose in order to take hold. You need to encourage and support different methods to achieve that goal. Your way isn't the only way. It's sometimes hard to swallow, but embrace it. And you know it. You got common sense. You know there's more than one way to get it done. So let loose a little bit. Then as you're learning to delegate, allowing other people to do it their way, allow them to make better decisions on their own, you're developing a growth mindset. And allow for mistakes. Mistakes are okay, as long as it's not going to shut down the business. Mistakes are okay. And that's usually the trigger for you to step in and take over and do it for them. Because nobody can do anything right around here. Let the mistakes happen. And don't fear them, embrace them. Fail often. Because that is how many will learn. They'll learn not what not to do. Those are our greatest learning lessons. Embrace that it's okay to screw up from time to time. Encourage innovation, encourage experimentation. And again, I know it's hard, but if you want to move from manager to leader, if you want to be much more effective in your day-to-day responsibilities, you're going to have to do it. And I'll say again, your team is a reflection of you. I mentioned earlier the over-controlling manager that I'm working with right now, coaching him out of his perfectionism. This company has a very tough time promoting mid-level managers within the organization because of this person's over-controlling nature. People aren't growing. And he doesn't know who has the capabilities because he keeps everybody stifled. They constantly have to go to the outside to hire mid-level managers. It slows the growth. It's a Band-Aid. So if you want to maximize your success, you've got to allow your team to be successful. They are a reflection of you. You are only as good as them, and that's the reverse of the mindset of many micromanagers. Is they believe they make the team successful. No, it's the team that makes you successful. No matter what business you're in, the people business, and this step right here is essential to improving your people game. You've got to develop a growth mindset. Understand their growth is your growth. As they rise, you rise. As you rise, they rise, the company rises. And your life will get easier. You'll have less stress. You'll have less frustration. There'll be less dependence on you. You can work on bigger, more important things as part of your responsibility. You can grow. So encourage autonomy and allow your team members to plan and execute tasks in their own way within a set parameter. Again, there's lines to be drawn in here, but you need to embrace that. And you need to likely improve your communication skills. Efficient versus effective. Be clear, but not overbearing. Avoid creating your monologue. If you're in meetings and goal setting and the time that you're having conversations, what needs to get done is purely a monologue, you're doing it wrong. You need to open it up to a dialogue. You must collaborate. Again, that's not something that is natural to you. But how do I collaborate? Well, it's just asking questions. But by you asking questions, what are you doing? You're helping them think. You're building that critical thinking muscle within them. You're helping them to develop their critical thinking skills. Now, as you collaborate, your tendency is going to say, yeah, but, interrupt them because that's not what you wanted them to say. Back off on that. You need to practice active listening. Get it all out there. Don't interrupt them. Ask more questions. And if you practice active listening and you truly understand your team's needs, their perspectives, their knowledge level, and in turn you empower them to make decisions, even if it isn't the decision that you would make, provide them with resources and support rather than direct. And also part of being a better communicator, this doesn't always come into mind, is make yourself approachable, make yourself available and approachable. Many people who are micromanagers give off the air that they're unapproachable. You've got to change that perception. I know you want them to come to you for questions, but nobody ever comes to you for questions about the right stuff. You're not being very approachable. You want to encourage them to come to you with ideas. You want them to come to you with solutions, come to you with concerns, not just being told what to do. And again, in my show notes, I'm going to put the critical thinking skills cheat sheet that's been super popular. Thousands of people have downloaded this. I've gotten a lot of positive comments on it. Download it. It's in the show notes. And it's truly just a cheat sheet of who, when, where, how, when. The open-ended questions gives you the thought mechanisms you need to be implanting in order to collaborate and start getting ideas and thoughts and approaches, empowerment out of your team. And of course, I'm not telling you to go to the opposite direction, just let them do whatever they want to do. That is not what I'm saying. You need to have regular check-ins, but it can't be constant monitoring. Replace your constant monitoring with regular scheduled check-ins. Use these check-ins to offer support and guidance, not control. Ask questions as you're checking in. What are you working on? Why did you choose that as priority? How are you doing it? When do you think you'll get it done? How much more do you think you can get done? Is there another way you can think of to get it done? How is that working for you? Is it working out the way you thought it would? And then if you really want to get better at this, and I work with a lot of people with this challenge of being overly bearing in micromanagement. It's very common. You're not special. Get some professional development. Invest in yourself. Invest in your professional development to improve your leadership skills. You should consider some courses or some coaching in leadership, maybe in communication or emotional intelligence. I always have a link in my show notes for our online leadership training. It starts at $47 a month. Quit at any time. Check it out if you're interested. It's an easy, self-paced way for you to start getting some of the ways how to do a lot of these things I'm talking about. And as you start getting some professional development, getting trained, but you're not going to figure it out on your own. You're going to need help. You need to monitor your progress. How well am I improving? Back to 360 feedback. You probably, if you decide you want to embrace this challenge, start working on yourself, get some 360 feedback once a quarter, because you need to regularly assess your progress. How well am I doing on changing my management style? And be patient with yourself. I told you earlier, be patient with your team. You need to be patient with yourself. You've got a lifelong habit that you're trying to break. And this kind of habit or behavioral change takes time and practice and knowing that it's a habit. And under pressure, often extreme pressure, you're going to revert back to your old habit because that's really comfortable. So you're going to make mistakes. That's okay. Know that you made the mistake, learn from it, don't do it again. But by following some of these steps I just mentioned with you, adopting some of these best practices, a micromanager can successfully transition to a more empowering and effective leadership style. And you'll foster a positive, productive, and motivated team environment. The harsh reality of micromanagement in the workplace clearly is detrimental to you, your company, your team, productivity, success. And you need to be honest with yourself and rethink your management style. Acknowledge that you have it, get some feedback, start getting some developmental help. And if I give you one piece of advice that's going to be more powerful than anything else, opt for a more collaborative approach. Ask other people's opinions, their thoughts, how they would do it, what they've done in the past that's worked, what they've done in the past that's failed. Get their opinions, get all the views and the experiences and the knowledge into the pool of collective knowledge. They feel heard. You'll likely learn from that and then be confident enough to let all of that, if not some of that, into the approach. So let's get away from directing every move. As a manager, you need to trust your employees, start building that trust with them. They will then start trusting you. Allow them to take responsibility, make some mistakes, learn from those mistakes. Think about small things you can start delegating so you start building your delegating muscle. There's some tasks. Give up a few things. Maybe it's training or mentoring or new hire onboarding, something like that. Give that up. It empowers your direct reports and allows you, the manager, to focus on more significant tasks that require your attention, things that are at your pay grade, instead of doing employees' jobs for them. And ultimately, it's imperative to remember that it's imperative to remember that the true strength of a company is the employees. Their success is your success. You're in the people business. And giving your people the freedom to innovate and drive towards goals and ultimately take the company to new heights, you're winning. You're going to be better than you could have ever imagined. So let's get after it. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of the Business Mechanics Show. If today's content resonates with you, then you're going to love what we have to offer. For those of you who are ready to take your business or personal career to the next level, we have an array of training and coaching services tailored just for you. From performance coaching designed to enhance your potential, to executive coaching that guides leaders to steer their ships towards greater success. Are you in sales management or looking to fortify your leadership acumen? Dive into our sales management training and coaching. Not only will it sharpen your strategies, but it will also provide you an ROI that's undeniable. Remember, the best investment you can make is in yourself and your team. For those seeking flexible learning options, we're excited to share our online and in-person management leadership classes. These aren't just your typical courses. They are meticulously crafted, ensuring that they align with your unique needs and aspirations. And the best part, prices start at just $47 per month, making top-tier coaching and training accessible for everyone. Your growth, both personally and professionally, can have a ripple effect, the one I call the transformational triangle of change. The skills you learn, the perspectives you gain, And the efficiencies you create can translate into increased revenues, more cohesive teams, and an enriched company culture. So why wait? The potential ROI on this investment isn't just in dollars, it's in the progressive future you're carving out for yourself and your organization. Thanks once again for tuning in. And remember, every business needs a tune-up every now and then. Let the Business Mechanic Show be your guide. Check out our website, rdltraining.com, to discover more details on our programs and coaches. We have a link in the show notes to guide you there. Until next time, we're out of here.